So good morning, everyone. Very excited to be here. Thank you for inviting us. We are Spaak. My fellow team members, Livio and Josephine, are over there. And Dan, unfortunately, could not make it. He's still in the Netherlands. His sister is getting married, also important. I'll be talking about holistic hospitals today. And why will I be talking about holistic hospitals today? What's going on? Well, we have a major problem on our hands. Every year, more and more pollutants from hospital waste end up in the environment. And this has major consequences for the ecosystem. For example, pharmaceuticals and hormones in the water are changing the gender of fish in the same water. And antidepressant drugs are changing the behavior of birds, making them way too relaxed, actually, and making them very vulnerable to predators. And on top of this, every year, we lose a lot of valuable resource because of the way we deal with hospital waste. We either dump it or we destroy it. So the valuable materials are lost. And this is actually backed up by a lot of research, as you can see here. So the question is not why, but how are we going to deal with this? And we propose, therefore, to solve it at the source. Why do we want to solve it at the source? Well, there's 3 reasons. First of all, hospitals function as pollution hotspots. Second, 15% of the hospital waste is extremely hazardous. But because it's combined with all the other streams in a municipality, the entire waste stream is polluted with hazardous waste, incurring a lot of costs. And finally, we want to recover the valuable resources that are in those streams. So what do we propose? We propose the holistic hospital concept, an integrated approach to hospital wastewater management. Well, it basically consists of 2 parts. We have an inside part and an outside part, and discuss the inside part first. The inside part in the hospital, there's basically 2 streams, solid waste and wastewater. And what we want to do is combine those 2 streams into one. So what we do, we install a grinder on every floor, every room in the hospital, in which you can just put your solid waste, and this grinder will grind the solid waste to very small pieces. So small even that they can be transported to the sewage pipes so that the 2 flows are combined. And this flow then exits the building and enters the screening phase. And outside the building, we have a treatment facility in which the flow comes in, and there the 2 streams are separated again through a screening phase into a solid waste stream and a wastewater stream. And I'll first discuss the wastewater stream. So the first wastewater stream goes into a bioreactor, and here it is treated with activated sludge. And this basically means that a bunch of bacteria come in and break down the organic compounds in the water to even smaller parts. And these parts then settle at the bottom, after which they are transported to the solid waste stream. Later on, I will discuss how those are treated. For now, we continue to the membrane filtration stage. And the membrane filtration filters out certain substances, basically bacteria and viruses, nasty ones. Then we disinfect the water. This can be done through 2 methods. You can either use UV or ozone, depending on your preference. And then all the parts, all the substances in the water are broken down to smaller parts, which are not so dangerous anymore, actually, but they do need to be taken out. And for this, we let the water flow to the activated carbon tank. And in the activated carbon tank, basically, all the remaining particles, all of them in the water, they're attached to the carbon, and the water, they stay in the tank, and the water that flows out is completely clean. So clean even that it's cleaner than your tap water. You could actually drink it. Unfortunately, by law, this is not allowed. But what you can do is you can upcycle it back into your hospital. And, for example, flush your toilet with it. And by doing this, you can reduce the water demand of a hospital by 30 to 40%. So now I will discuss the solid waste stream. So first, what we want to do is we want to mix all the solid waste so we have a homogeneous composition. And after this stage, we take out the water through hydrolysis. And then we put the remaining waste into the digester. And this digester, it turns the solid waste into biogas. And this biogas is really useful because we can, depending on the relative composition of the waste and the amount of bioplastics in there, we can power up to 95% of the energy that is needed for the treatment process. So it's almost self-sustaining. On top of this, the digestion process reduces the volume of the solid waste by up to by 90%. So we have only 10% of the solid waste remaining. What we do then, we take out the remaining water, and the solid waste is then transported to a third party, and this third party can then destroy the waste, but first they can also still take out the valuable metals in there. So that's also recovered. So this is a very good concept, but we believe we can make it even better, and this depends on bioplastics. And I will now talk about this. Bioplastics have two advantages, basically. First of all, we do not rely on oil to make them, which is becoming increasingly scarce. And second, the more bioplastics that are in the process, in the waste stream, the higher the efficiency of the process. There are, however, also two drawbacks, which are currently still a problem. First of all, bioplastics are still rather expensive. And second, for only 50% of the materials that are used in hospitals, we have a bioplastic analog. However, we talked to some experts, and they expect that in the coming years, this market for bioplastics will grow by up to 30%. And this means two things. First of all, the price will go down. And second, more bioplastic analogs will be developed. So we have this problem should solve itself in the future. So I know this all sounds rather expensive, this concept. So what we did was we made a calculation for a hospital of the size of 450 beds. And what we found is that you need a capital investment of 3.5 million to install the concept. So that this gets you three things. First, you get the treatment facility. You have the modifications inside the hospital. And you have a stack of bioplastic products, which you can use in the process. And on top of this, you have a yearly operating expense of $100,000. But these things together generate a net savings of $500,000 every year for your hospital. And this cost reduction consists of three parts. First of all, you have no extra cost for wastewater treatment. You have a 90% reduction in cost for solid waste treatment. And finally, you have a reduction on your water bill because you can supply part of the water demand for the hospital by this process. So these cost reductions get you a return on investment from 5 to 10 years. This difference depends on the size of your hospital. A bigger hospital will have a shorter return on investment. A larger one will have a longer one. So what do we want to achieve? We want to achieve a transition in society. So we made a framework based on transition theory. And first, what we need is a feasible technology. Well, I just presented you one. This is our concept. But we also need capital investors to come in and to invest and back up the hospital, to provide capital to make the investment. And this initiates the transition phase, Then we need the government to provide the corresponding legal framework in order to accelerate this. These three things together can then create a paradigm shift in society, which we need. This all sounds very good, but we also recognize there are some serious challenges. First of all, we have the economical challenge. 3.5 million is a sizable investment. So we need to convince investors that this is a good deal, and I think this is possible because we have a return on investment from 5 to 10 years, which I think is reasonable. Second, we have an issue that the negative effects of hospital waste are not necessarily felt by the hospital, but rather it's felt by society and the environment. So how do we make sure that hospitals have an incentive to actually change their waste? For this, we really need to convince politicians. Politicians have an objective to either create legislation so that hospitals get an incentive or that they are forced to do something about this. And finally, we have a societal objective challenge, and this means that we need to create awareness on this issue. I think very few people know that hospital waste is such a large issue, and this is something that needs to change. So we have a general push in society for change on this matter. Well, despite these challenges, however, we really think this concept will work. Well, first of all, because we achieve a 90% reduction in waste volume, we have a minimized environmental impact, we have a decreased contamination risk of pollutants in the environment. Fourth, we have a savings of $500,000 with a return on investment for 5 to 10 years, which is good. And finally, we recover resources in the form of gas, water, and valuable metals. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
Well, one question that came to mind, I mean, we love your idea. Your presentation was excellent, and I think you really touched on some other future issues that you're going to have to do when you talked about the challenges. Mm-hmm. My question would be, what percentage of the bioplastics are you going to be able to exchange into the hospital process for use in this system that you've got outlined?
Currently, there's a replacement for 50% of the products, and if it's supposed to be feasible, according to the people we talked to, to reach up to 93% in the end. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
To what extent does your whole system rely on that switch to bioplastics?
Sorry?
To what extent does your system rely on the switch?
The calculations and the numbers you just saw, they're based on the current situation, so 50% bioplastics. So it can only become better. Yeah. So it does not require bioplastics to work, but the efficiency, the return of the methane out of your process, it improves as soon as the relative amount of bioplastics go up. Yeah.
Martin, have you, I know we were chatting beforehand.
Yeah, we did.
Sounds like you have not prototyped this out yet.
No, we have not.
Okay.
No.
That would obviously be the next step to kind of prove out the concept and see if this is possible. So part of your proposal is to have grinders in each hospital room. And we have, back in California, in Cupertino, we have recycling bins and we have compost bins. And even the human behavior is such that people ignore the compost sign and they dump whatever they want into this compost bin. Folks like me go and try to sort it out a little bit.
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to have that luxury in a hospital room with folks staying, and there's not going to be much policing of what goes in. So I'm wondering, are you guys thinking through the contamination that's going to happen and the impact that'll have on this system?
I think this will be not a very large issue, to be honest, because I think hospital employees, they will definitely know how to handle the waste. I mean, you trust them with far more extreme things, far much more dangerous things. I think we can instruct them to put the waste in the grinder. And I think regular people in the hospital will not be putting their waste in these grinders. They're mostly for the waste that comes from, I don't know, your bedpans, any tissue, any materials that are used during the operation process, these kind of things. And then you have, of course, the normal waste flow. For example, if you eat a Snickers and you throw away your container, you put it in a normal bin. So that will probably not go into the grinder, but in a regular waste flow. But for all the waste that comes from surrounding the bed and the operations, that will go into the grinder. So I think that will be all right, because the normal people will not have access to these grinders.
I do want to thank you, for, like the other judges have said, you eloquently took us through the story and the process and the flow, and so I want to thank you for that. The last question that I have is, have you been speaking with hospitals, and who have you identified as your potential partners that are interested in this?
We have talked to a lot of people. We've talked to professors at the university and at other universities. We've talked to companies that would produce these techniques. And we've talked to hospitals, and they were all very positive, actually. So we've not come up with a strategy yet, so how we want to move forward. But we do know there's interest, both from production companies as well as possible clients. So I think we would probably team up with a company that could produce these things. It's probably made, because these grinders, they're already being made for different purposes as well. We would probably team up with one of those and then take it further. Yeah.
So have you identified a hospital yet that would be interested in partnering with you?
We've been mainly talking to the Amsterdam, it's the university hospital in Amsterdam, and they would be interested. We also know from some other university hospitals in the Netherlands that are at least interested in this concept. Yes, so that's probably where we would start. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. I have just a couple of questions. First of all, I think you mentioned in one of your final statements something about reclaiming metals. And I was wondering, because a lot of the metals that are used, in a hospital, needles, scalpels, things like that, are biohazards because they've come in contact with human tissues and whatnot. And what your plan is for separating those from the bioplastics in a safe manner, so that those waste streams are managed separately. Because I would imagine you wouldn't want those sharp metal parts going through the grinder and the digester and all of that.
No, it's actually not a problem.
Oh, really?
They can just go in. No, it's not a problem. No. This grinder, it's really strong. It breaks anything, especially since the metals used in the operation process, it's really flimsy. It's very thin, actually, so it was just broken down. It's not a problem for the treatment process.
So then you have fine small pieces of metal in your sludge,
Yeah.
and then how's that getting separated from the remainder?
Well, it's a completely different process. It's not happening at the treatment facility. It's done by a third party.
Okay.
And this is actually something that's being done with regular waste also.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool. And I had another question, and it's escaping me right now, so we'll give the
Okay.
other judges a chance.
I'll jump in with a quick one then. About the treatment facility that has to be located outside of the hospital.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about the size and the feasibility of building this and what might be already an environment where space is a premium?
I don't think it has to be very big. I think it could be as big, maybe 2 meters high, as big as this stage, something like that, yeah. Depending on the size of your hospital, of course, yeah. But they don't necessarily require enormous installations. It doesn't have to be a huge building, so.
Okay. I love that you addressed the challenges and you talked about the societal and the political. What do you think is going to have to change to make it the responsibility of the hospital to pay for these treatment facilities?
I think because there's already financial incentive because they pay a lot of money already for the treatment of their wastewater, for example. So there's a monetary incentive. But what would really help if they would become the only thing that needs to change is that they are actually responsible for the effects, for the way their waste is treated. If you do that, they also have, beside their financial incentive, which I think is really important to get things moving. If you force them to do it, if it's just a normal responsibility of the hospital, I think you'll be there, because there's no reason not to do it. And on top of this, I think it's already also really an awareness issue. Most hospitals that we talk to, they are not thinking about this. They're not considering it. They put up several investment decisions, but they're not considering these as one of them. And this is a shame. It's just an awareness thing also.
It's not come back.
Yeah, one more. Cost of retrofitting hospitals. Is that factored into the capital investment, the upfront investment?
Yes.
It is. And how did you model that? Is that based on a particular hospital that you've toured? Maybe you could explain how you modeled that.
Well, actually, the only really retrofitting that has to happen is the installation of these grinders, for which you do not need to make a huge modification inside the hospital. You just have to put it and connect it to the sewage pipe. And you have this main pipe coming out of the building. So we have the cost for the installment of a pipe. That's something we know. We know how much these grinders cost. And then we have a small premium for the labor that you have to use to get the thing up there. That's how we modeled. That's what we incorporated. And then we have calculated a number of grinders, a set number of grinders for a certain number of beds in the hospital. So we had some ratios for that.
I remembered my question.
Oh, great. Yeah.
I was wondering if you have considered the impacts to the existing sort of piping system in the hospital of adding a lot more solid material.
Yeah.
I understand it'll be ground into a sludge, but my intuition is that these pipes need a certain amount of liquid to keep all of that flowing. So.
Well, you are, of course, adding water to the wastewater pipe. You can just add water in these grinders. But in fact, I know it's intuitive, but the opposite is actually happening. When you put a pipe and you fill it up with stuff, in fact, the hydraulics will become, what shall I say, a bit more wild, and it's actually pushed through because there's a push in the piping system. So it might even flow a bit better than it does now.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. Thank you.
That's it.
Judges, thank you, Spaak.